Good afternoon, Mr. Bennett.
Good afternoon, Miss Bennett.
Thank you for coming in. I'm Miss Bennett, which you apparently already know, and this panel of invisible people, it represents the principal and the lead teachers from our school. So the position we're hiring you for is unique. Our needs for this year are both a PE teacher and a dean. There will be 2 classes of PE in the morning, first and second period, and then the rest of the day will be dedicated to dean and administrative activities. I see that you have been teaching for 15 years. What types of roles have you held in those 15 years?
My first 9 years were dedicated exclusively to PE.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, I served as team leader for the 6th grade team. Also taught some reading classes when we were doing a new school-wide initiative called Success for All. And I was a March of Dimes coordinator for a number of years, athletic director for 6 years. I coached our state champion archery team 6 years, coached boys volleyball, girls volleyball, boys soccer, helped with girls soccer. I coached girls basketball. I think that's about all I've done.
Sounds like you were very busy.
And then that was the first 9 years, and then after those 9 years, and then I got into being a dean, and I'm in my 6th year now as a dean, and I enjoy being a dean a lot, and being on the administrative team.
So you mentioned athletic director, volleyball, soccer, archery. Can you tell us can you elaborate a little bit more on your involvement with school activities or sports events?
So as the athletic director at the middle school that I was at, I organized everything from start to finish, from officials to people to take money at the door, the concession stands. Sometimes I even had to officiate myself, but it was easiest when I organized that ahead of time. Sometimes I used former student athletes of mine to give them hours, community service hours, but sometimes I just ended up having to pay people. I organized the tryouts and permission slips and travel to and from. So everything that needed to be done, I did.
Do you have any experience organizing big trips or community events related to your sports teams?
I mentioned the archery team state champions.
Mm-hmm.
The state championship used to be nearby in our school, about an hour away, and then they moved farther south, which made it more difficult for us to get there. So one of the possibilities that they gave us was to host the tournament ourselves, so I did that. And not only did I host the tournament for our school, but 5 other schools in the district. So I organized that and set it up, and we invited the community to come, and with 6 different schools participating, we did have a lot of people there, and we had concessions, and we organized all that, so that was a lot of fun, and the community really got behind it.
Very good. So your first, or one of your roles as a PE teacher, could you tell me what types of topics you would like to teach your students?
Some days there's time for free time, if you will, or time as a reward activity, and if the kids choose to play that on their own, I don't like to make that as one of the units that I choose, because it's one that they do already.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to incorporate things that they may not be familiar with, or something they may not have done before. Ultimate frisbee, golf, archery, things like, or hockey, floor hockey, scooter racing, just things that they may not do on a normal basis.
Oh, that's very unique. Could you provide an overview of how a typical unit would look from the introduction to the assessment, like how your cycle of instruction goes?
Sure. So during a unit, I may probably use 6 weeks of time to teach and participate. So the first week we talk about rules and basic fundamentals of the movements that are going to be incorporated in the specific games themselves, and then the next week to 2 weeks is offensive and defensive techniques, if that's part of it, and then try to do some practice games in the fourth week, and then the last 2 weeks try to have some type of culminating activity, whether it's a tournament or something where they get to compete against each other, or for archery and golf's sake, just to see where they are specifically for compared to whatever the norm is.
And how do you do assessments, note taking?
The notes are limited. I start with either a handout or some type of seek and find from either the internet or from the textbook that we're using, so that the children are reading while they're doing it. And but the assessments are limited to the skills that we teach. I'll give usually one skills test to determine, while there's multiple skills in each unit, I may, if in ultimate frisbee, I may give a throwing and a catching assessment, so I might do two. And when we do a flag football unit, we try to do a punt, pass, and kick contest, just the basic skills that they do, but try to make it fun to incorporate it. I do give a written test with each unit also, that we review the rules, history, basics about each sport. So each one has its own written assessment, and as well as a skills assessment.
Awesome. So I have a scenario for you. So you are a high school, you're in a high school physical education class. You have both boys and girls, and your classes range in size from 24 to 36 students. Today you have organized your first period class into 6 teams of 6 students, each with an equal number of boys and girls. The plan is to have the teams engage in a series of activities that include running, climbing, and sit-ups. One boy, Mark Miller, complains that his team is at a disadvantage because a girl on the team has a deformed foot and cannot run fast. Put her on somebody else's team, Mark says. We don't want her. She'll just make us lose. Several students on the other teams voice similar sentiments. One says, you keep her, we don't want her. How do you handle that situation?
Because there are so many students at our school that do have exceptionalities. We've encountered many situations like this before, and when I design my lessons, I plan for just this type of scenario. And the reason for the 3 different activities would be so that each child doesn't have to do all 3 activities, but the student that isn't capable of running fast could do the climbing or the sit-ups, and then that would allow it to balance out. So what I would say to the child first would be to correct him, and that everybody's different, and just because she may not be the fastest, she may be able to do more sit-ups than anybody in the class, or climbing, maybe her upper body strength or something is more better than the others. So just to design the lesson so that every kid has equal opportunities, and discourage negative talk among the students, that because part of school is learning that you have to interact with everyone, no matter what they are like.
And I like that you plan for those exceptionalities in advance. So now I want to switch over and talk about your role as a dean. So could you tell me a little bit about student discipline procedures that you're familiar with and why you think they work?
For the last 4 years, we've been using a tracking system that we call BIP, STAR, Behavior Intervention Plan.
We use that here at our school.
And that's been very helpful because students are in 6 or 7 classes a day, and if the same student is having a disruptive problem in every class, that student may get 7 or 14 different warnings before a disciplinary action is taken, and that, in my opinion, that's too much. So by us using this tracking tool, it allows each teacher to input data, but also to see the data that's been entered by the other teachers. So as a middle schooler and then on to high school, these students are not elementary anymore. They don't need to be corrected every day over and over and over. They need to be more responsible for their actions and held accountable for their actions. So if first period tells Johnny to do this and he's corrected, but he has to do it 7 times, it may be time to have a parent conference or to have some other type of intervention, whether it's checking in, checking out each day, or we could schedule an MTSS meeting where we try to see if the student's in the best system for them, whether they need possible ESE testing or different placements. So just to evaluate and make sure that but the best thing is to track and be on the same page, everyone on the same page.
I like that. That's our philosophy here as well. So sometimes when you have to deal with children and their behaviors, their parents can be difficult. Can you give an example maybe of a time where you had to deal with a difficult parent and some of the techniques or strategies you use with them?
Sometimes in each of the years that I've been a dean, we've had at least 2 deans. So sometimes parents feel like a specific dean doesn't treat them fairly, and so we have, and they request to not have a specific dean handle a situation for their child. So in these cases, we try to accommodate that just to keep the peace, if you will. But this morning we had a student who had his driving privileges removed for reckless driving in the parking lot. Well, the mother felt like that I was mistreating her son or picking on her son, but all I did was observe the reckless driving. The principal told me to write the student up, and the other dean handled the referral. So the only thing I did was type the referral up, but the mother felt like that I was picking on this kid, but in reality, I just did what the boss told me to do. So we try to be very abstract. We're cut and dry. This is the code of conduct. The code of conduct says to follow this rule. If this rule is broken, this is the consequences. And it's much easier when we don't say, well, it might be this or it might be that. It says that fighting, the discipline for fighting is 5 to 10 days of out of school suspension, and we at Palaca High School we go with the maximum. And last week I had a parent that was really upset that we had suspended his son for 10 days and he was just defending himself, and so I let the parent know that that's our consequences at Palaca High School, and there's no gray area to it. So we just try to be very, very concrete and follow the procedures as outlined in the code of conduct.
Oh, that's very good. So, talk, like, you are so involved with your sports teams, and you also have this other side where you take an administrative role and you're going to be the dean. So how do you manage, or how do you build student parent relationships and help to maintain like positive community perceptions of both for yourself, for your teams, for our school?
I think communication is the key, first of all, to all the relationships, whether it's student teacher, student parent, parent school, and the communication, email, social medias, phone calls are they don't work quite as well as they used to, but I think we use social media at our school, and when we want to get word out about something, the principal will share it on our high school page, and he tracks the number of shares and the comments and the people that have seen it, and if it's a hot topic, we can get several thousand views in a short amount of time. So Facebook is really good because so many people do share it. We have a messenger application that I send emails to the entire student body and every parent that is attached to that child that also has email. These emails go out, and so it's easy for me to send out 1,200 emails in a short amount of time to communicate. It may be the plan for homecoming week and the activities that we're going to do each day, and reminders about upcoming events or things that we may be noticing as a problem at school to share with the parents of how we're handling those problems and things like that.
Well, that's wonderful. That concludes my questions for you. Do you have any questions for us about our school?
When does the job start?
The posting closes this Friday. And so when the posting closes, we will meet as a team, and then we will let everybody know by Tuesday afternoon what their application status is.
How about the demographics of the school? How many children?
We have 530 students.
Someone peed on this towel.
We have 530 students, and now my son has me sidetracked.